All right. Hello, everyone. So today we are going to talk about my top 4 mindset hacks for when you are just feeling completely unmotivated. So these 4 hacks will help you create more motivation, be more productive, and even feel like you have more time in your day. So let's dig in. So if you're new here, I am Kate, and this channel is here to empower you with self-coaching tools and mindset hacks to upgrade your life and business. So today we are talking all about motivation, something that so many of us struggle with. So these 4 mindset hacks that we're going to talk about are going to help you create more motivation, especially those days where you are just not feeling like working. You can tap into these hacks, shift into these ways of being and believing, and even I have some tips and tricks in this video that might help you when you're feeling really, really unmotivated. So let's dig into these 4 hacks. So hack number 1, and really a mindset to keep in mind when you think of motivation, is that motivation is not lost. Motivation is not found. Motivation is created. So I know you've probably heard people before talk about how I have just lost motivation, right? You've probably said this before too. I know that I do this oftentimes around 3 p.m. in the afternoon when I completely lose all of my motivation. I say, oh, I've just lost motivation for the day. So we often think about motivation as this thing, almost this physical thing that we lose and then have to go find again, right? So you have motivation, then you lose it, and then you have to find it again. But there's a really big problem with this way of thinking, and that is because the idea of motivation is not like your car keys, right? Or your cell phone, who, if anyone's like me, I leave everywhere except where I remember it to be, right? So your motivation is not like your cell phone or your car keys that you're constantly misplacing throughout your home. Motivation is a state of being. Now, state of beings cannot be lost or found. A state of being is created. It is cultivated because it's a mindset, right? Motivation is created through your thoughts, through the way you feel. So the only way you lose motivation is if you're kind of psyching yourself out, right? If you've shifted into an unmotivated or unproductive state of being. But you also have the power to shift back into a state of being that is also motivated. So I want you to think about motivation as not something you lose, not something you find, but something you create. So think about what thoughts fuel motivation. What emotions drive motivation, right? What thoughts can you think that will help you feel more motivated? How can you feel, right? How do you need to feel to be motivated? And what gets you into that energetic state, right? So motivation is a state of being, it is a mindset, and it's also an energy. So what gets you motivated? What gets you pumped up, right? Maybe it's doing a workout. Maybe it's going for a walk, right? Just shifting what you're doing. Maybe it's listening to music. But remember, motivation is not something you lose and then have to find again. Motivation is something you can actively create and cultivate. And when you think about it in that sense, it becomes so much more empowering, right? Because thinking about motivation as something you lose and then have to find is really disempowering. You lose your power there. But when you remember that you can, in fact, create motivation, you take your power back. All right, hack number 2. Motivation builds through doing things. Okay, so you learned in hack number 1 that motivation is not lost. It's not something you find, it's something you create. Now, to add on to that, hack number 2 is that motivation builds over time through doing things. So just like if you threw a ball down a hill, it picks up speed as it rolls down the hill, right? The same goes for motivation. The more you act, right? The more action you take, the more you actually do, you will build motivation. So I know you've had days like this, right? Where you're like sitting, you're staring at your computer and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I have no motivation. I just feel bleh, right? And if you just stay in that state where you're just thinking in that loop of like, I'm not motivated, I can't do this, you're just going to keep doing nothing and keep feeling crappier, right? But if instead you just try to do something for just a short period of time, you can actually build motivation as you go. So I'm going to give you a couple little hacks for this. So first hack is that if you have a really long to-do list and you're feeling unmotivated, start with a couple easy tasks. There is nothing that will help you build motivation faster than ticking off a few things from your to-do list. So I know a lot of people say like, do the big task first, right? Get it out of the way. And that's great if that works for you. But if you're feeling unmotivated, you don't want to do the task that takes the most energy, right? Start with little things, right? Answer that email. Check that voicemail, email that client, just put up that social media post, whatever. Do something little, do something small that you can check off from your to-do list. And as you do those little things, you will start to build your motivation. You'll build your productivity. You'll even build your confidence for how productive you're going to be for the day. So start with the little things, start checking things off your list, and you will build motivation. Another thing to try that I like to do is when I'm feeling really unmotivated, but I really need to get a task done, is that I'll try just doing it for 15 minutes. So look at the clock, figure out how long 15 minutes is, and then I will honestly dive into that task for 15 minutes. And I tell myself if after 15 minutes, I am just spinning my wheels, it's not working, then I either need to walk away or switch tasks, right? Because there's no use in just spinning your wheels and getting nothing done, right? You need to shift if you're really, really stuck. But what I find happens more often is that I'll be like, all right, just 15 minutes, start working on the sales page. And if it's not coming out, just stop and shift tasks. But what happens more often than not is that 15 minutes goes by and I don't even realize. And then 30 minutes. And then all of a sudden it's been an hour. And I realize that I have picked up motivation throughout that amount of time. But telling my brain to just start with 15 minutes and if it doesn't work, it's okay, takes all the pressure off, takes all the guilt off, which allows me to just dive in and see if I can get into a flow. Now remember, there are going to be days where you're just really struggling with motivation because you are a human. You're not a robot. We're not meant to work in 8-hour cycles nonstop all the time, right? And remember that taking a day off can be the difference between burning out or not, okay? So if you're really, really struggling and these hacks aren't working, remember that it's okay to step away. And sometimes even just a 15-minute break can be all you need to find that motivation again. Okay. So, hack number 3, you are not bound by your creativity windows, or you could say your productivity windows, right? So you've probably heard about this before, how we all kind of have times of day where we're most productive, where we're most creative, right? Some people are really productive in the morning. Some people are really productive late at night. I know I find that I'm the most productive typically like kind of late morning into early afternoon, maybe like 10 to 1 or 2 o'clock, usually around 3, I hit a slump like most people. So I know these things about myself, right? I know that I have these productivity windows where I tend to be a little more productive. And working within your productivity windows is so helpful. Knowing when you tend to be more motivated and productive makes sense, right? If you know when you're going to probably get more done, it makes more sense to structure your day around that. Now, I know I'm probably not going to be motivated at 9 o'clock at night because that's when I want to go to bed. So I'm not going to start my workday at 9 o'clock, right? I'm going to try to start my workday around 9 or 10 because that's when I tend to be most motivated. But, and this is a big but to remember, you are not bound by these productivity or creativity windows. So say for instance that I have a really busy morning, right? Things don't go to plan. I'm dealing with like maybe a sick kid, a sick dog. I had to do something like my refrigerator broke, right? Life happens. Life happens even for entrepreneurs that work at home even. So say I have just like a crazy morning and I don't sit down to work until 1 p.m. Now 1 p.m. is kind of on the back end of my productivity window. Now I could sit down and be like, oh God, this is great. I'm not starting till 1. I'm going to get nothing done today. And guess what? If I approach it with that mindset, I'm going to get nothing done. Or I can sit down to work and be like, all right, Kate, you're going to work from 1 to 3, and you are going to get more done in this 2-hour period than you ever would have gotten done from 10 to 2 when you were dealing with the life things that were happening, right? And if I sit down from that mindset, from that perspective, I am going to be more productive. I'm going to get more done, because at the end of the day, yes, your productivity and creativity windows are important to know and work within. But what's more important is your mindset, is your state of mind when you enter any type of work session. So remember that it's not all about working within your productivity window. And if you miss the window, you're not going to get anything done. It's all up here. If you think you're going to get nothing done, you're going to get nothing done. But if you tell yourself you're going to be productive, you're going to be creative in the whatever amount of time you have, you will be. It is so important to cultivate that mindset more than it is to worry about when you're working, right? Okay. So how you think about your work is more important than when you're actually doing it. Okay. And then tip number 4. This is one of my favorites. The 4th mindset hack is that motivation loves rewards. So one of my favorite things to do when I'm feeling unmotivated is to give myself a reward. So if I'm like, okay, Kate, you're going to sit down, you're going to work for 1 hour, and then after you complete that hour of work, you get to watch an episode of Outlander, right? Or maybe it's like, I'm going to crank out this podcast, or I'm going to crank out this blog post, or I'm going to finish up this web page, and then I'm going to go out to dinner, right? Or I'm going to open that new bottle of wine, or I'm going to go for a walk along the water, whatever it is, right? Give yourself little rewards. Like, let me tell you, nothing kills motivation than sitting down and being like, all right, for the next 8 hours straight, I am going to work, and I'm going to work and work and work and work and work. Nothing will squash your motivation more than that, right? Because like I said earlier, like, humans are not meant to work in these ridiculous structured 8 hour periods of time. Now, some people like function in an 8 to 5 time frame better than others. But let me tell you, your brain is not supposed to work like that. And if you just sit down and you're like, you're going to work for 8 hours straight because some person said you're supposed to sit down and work for 8 hours straight because that's what you were taught your whole life. If you just sit down and think that, you're going to squash your motivation. So instead, give yourself a reward. They can be little, right? I'm going to work for this 1 hour burst and then I get a piece of candy. Like, I am not kidding. Appeal to your inner child here. You as in, like, all humans love rewards, and motivation can be fueled by that, even if it's just little things. Maybe it's, I'm going to work for an hour and then I get to scroll on TikTok for 15 minutes. Whatever's going to motivate you, right? So I really think this is important when you're doing creative tasks too. The human brain doesn't just like turn on and off creativity. Now, I think that you can get better at that as you learn how to like kind of get into your own flow state. But creativity goes in waves, right? But you know what else I've learned about creativity is that creativity can be bribed. It can be bribed with a reward, just like motivation. So if you need to sit down and really work on a creative task, give yourself a reasonable amount of time and then tag on a reward at the end. So you have something driving you, pulling you towards that end goal, right? Just as a ball picks up speed going down a hill, you can kind of do that with your motivation, with your productivity, with your creativity by having a reward at the end. So remember, motivation loves rewards and creativity can be bribed. So if you're really struggling with motivating yourself, find something little, find something that brings you joy. Even if it is simply like, I'm going to work for 2 hours and then I am going to Netflix and chill guilt-free. That is fine, right? Because nothing about Netflixing and chilling feels good if you weren't productive, you weren't motivated and you didn't get your work done. But if instead you try to work really hard for an hour or two, knowing that you can sit your butt down on the couch for the rest of the evening guilt-free, now that is something to work towards, okay? So remember, just to go over these really quick. Number 1, motivation is not lost, motivation is not found, motivation is created. Number 2, motivation builds through doing things over time. Number 3, you are not bound by your creativity windows. Remember that how you think about your work is more important than when you are actually working. And then number 4, motivation loves rewards. Remember that motivation, productivity, and creativity can all be bribed by a little boost. All right, I hope those really helped you guys. Let me know in your comments what your favorite motivation, productivity, time-saving hacks or boosting, creativity, whatever it is. Let me know your favorite hacks or if you have little things that help you get into the flow. And as always, make sure you subscribe to this channel so you can get more self-coaching and mindset hacks to upgrade your life and business. Until next time, I will see you guys later.